Hi everyone. I am getting really into these readings. At first I started and I was like, I don't want to do all these readings, and I was like, I'm going to take days off, and I'm sure I will take days off. As I said, I'm like random like that, and I might just like disappear for a month or something, or like a year, but I truly don't do this for money, although hey, that would be great someday. And I have done readings for money. If you're interested, it's only $45 for 45 minutes via Zoom or pre-recorded. So I see it more of as a donation than something I'm really in it for the money for. But yeah, these readings are also just offered. I want to offer them as a free service to the world, and as my part of my artistic process. Sorry. Tarot is a skill that I took many years to learn and I'm obsessed with, but also just psychic readings without cards. And to talk a little bit very quickly about my skills before I do this reading so that you have some insight. I am a medium, so I have experience channeling people who passed on. I am clairaudient, clairvoyant. I've had experiences hearing and seeing energy. For one example is like hearing a loop of an experience that happened in a haunted house, hearing it over and over. That's the kind of gift that I have. You don't have to believe me, but that's my true experience of my life. And also just spiritual, intuitive, where with other people I can pick up on things that are happening with them emotionally, and such as, you know, emotional issues pretty quickly, which also is part of just my nervous system. I was born basically with PTSD because I had pre-birth trauma, and so I was born hyper aware. I wasn't crying when I was born, and then I proceeded to just be more and more creepily psychic and creep out the people around me as time went on. I'm not saying it's creepy. I think it's a great gift, but I just wanted to tell you that before the reading, because I'm feeling the energy and it's going to get a little bit out there. I also often reference guides. When I'm talking about guides, I'm talking about my guides and your guides that are not only spiritual guides from our family lineage, like ancestors, but also souls that are hopping onto our energy for their own expansion and helping us for their own personal reasons that we don't even know about, which is the thing. And I'm also talking sometimes about my higher self, and when I channel, I may talk differently, I may stutter, I may get excited, or I may just be in a different way of speaking than I am now. So I don't want you to be concerned, I don't want you to be worried. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little tune in here. Thank you, Spirit, for guiding this. What I can tell is going to be an intense reading that came through me. I love you, and I'm always trying to act in service of you and your greater good. And thank you, universe. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, God. Thank you, Saint Michael. Thank you, Saint Anthony. Thank you, Shiva. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Buddha. Okay. And thank you, Muhammad, just to cover all my bases. So, whoa, okay. You're really in a new place. You're really in a new place. I feel like you've been in a fog in your life. You've been in maybe there was some PTSD that created like you couldn't fully function with your brain. Also, sometimes if people are going through like poverty, your brain, I was just listening to something by Warren Buffett saying like that your brain doesn't function properly when you're poor. But I think that you are going through an intense time right now of regrowth and renewal. I'm seeing a crow, and I think that the crow can be about a lot of things. I don't want to immediately jump to death, but I feel that a crow can also be about like an omen, So I want to say it's a positive omen, and it's sort of adjacent to the Raven, which can be about like knowledge, wisdom. I think that you've gained a lot of wisdom in the past year, and you've changed. I think maybe on a lot of levels, like maybe even your taste buds have changed. And I got this reading because I was driving, and when I drive, I get into a very meditative state, sort of, and I can get a lot of info from people who've passed on during that time, and unintentionally, because I'm open and I'm not like, I'm just doing. I've been driving since I was 17, so I just like, I'm very like in the motions, and I'm an obsessive driver. I mean, I've been in little nicks here and there with other cars, but I'm like constantly scanning the road because my main thought is I can drive perfectly, but someone else might be drunk or not. So that's the kind of driver I am. So when I'm in that hypervigilance state, somehow weirdly I'm able to not think about like issues in my life, and I'm able to let other stuff come in. Also, if I swim, I'm a big swimmer, and I realize it creates I keep getting the term wrong. I keep saying isolation chamber, but really I mean sensory deprivation chamber. I don't know why I'm talking about myself. I think that maybe you're talking about yourself a lot to other people because you don't feel secure. But I was gonna say I was driving on the highway and I felt spaced out, and I was getting off of my exit, and then something like, this like Dave Matthews, I'm having some weird 90s nostalgia because I entered playing guitar by Dave Matthews Band. Not like, I like all kinds of music. I mean, really wide range, very wide range. If you want to look at some of my playlists, they're public, and there's some random ass stuff from all genres. Like, it's very random. I really just like a smorgasbord. I keep talking about myself in the reading. I think that you don't want people to see some deeper issue that's happening with you. I think that you're blocking people. You're hiding something. There's something that you need. So I snapped awake when the song came on, which was number 41. I mean, I wasn't falling asleep. I was just like, and then the song number 41, which I have played many times on my guitar and just love that song, and probably was one of the first songs I learned on guitar when I was like 12 years old. And of course I had like this punk rock music teacher who was like, oh my god, Dave Matthews Band is so stupid, and then went on to college and everyone told me that it was like the worst band ever, and I was like, yeah, you're right, but I was like, also I know every single song. And I'm like that with other bands. Like, I know probably like a bunch of Pete Frampton songs. I don't even know why, like random. Because I knew a bunch of Dashboard Confessional songs once. Because it's not so much about the genre, it's about picking songs that the way that they're written is an easy entry point into learning guitar. That was the main thing. DMB has a lot of sort of licks like that you can easily learn. Okay, I think there's something with your hands that you need to do, and the number 5, because the 41, the song 41 adds up to the number 5, and the 5, I always say and believe, is about change and communication. And Mercury, the planet Mercury, which again can be about the hands. Okay, so here we go. Okay, I'm snapping in now. I think I was a little afraid of this energy, so I was dancing around it. I think you've been in a long-term relationship that has been very psychologically damaging for you. But also, I think that you're incredibly in your head right now, so you're not even connecting with the fact that that's ended. And I think there's been a lot of stop and starts, so you're kind of like, I'm exhausted and I can't do this. I also feel like you're in a blasé place right now. And I feel like the snap that I felt when I was driving on the highway is like what you're gonna feel when things click into place, which is what Abraham Hicks calls the grid filling in. You're gonna feel this like snap feeling because you've been hiding from people, you've been keeping secrets because you're ashamed of something. I don't know what it is, but I want to tell you that you can release your shame and love yourself. No matter what it is, you can be forgiven, okay? And I also am feeling this really heavy weight in my solar plexus. I think that you are not supporting yourself, and you also feel this guilt, or not, it's not guilt, you feel excited. Okay, I'm feeling adrenaline because for a long time you were like, there's no way out of my situation, I can't do anything, and now you're like, kind of like, well, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could do that, and like you're kind of like taking the wheels off the, I don't know, the bike. I don't think that's actually a saying. I think I made that up. Okay. Why am I saying a bike? I think that I'm seeing a couple's bicycle. So you've been incredibly dependent on this person to like pedal through life with you as if you're on a couple's bicycle, and you've maybe even forced them to be on the bike when they didn't want to. Now you're on this like solo exercise stationary bike, I'm seeing symbolically. I think that there's some stuff from your childhood. I'm obsessed with people's childhoods. I'm sorry, you'll see it in all my readings. I'm obsessed with psychoanalysis. I love Freud. I love Lacan. I love just theorists adjacent to Lacan. Like, I don't know. I'm not gonna try to sound smart and whatever here. You know, one thing I was thinking the other day, I am gonna get a little snobby here. There's this thing that I need to tell you from Derrida, which he's a French, like up his ass philosopher, but he's great actually. And he talks about this thing called the center is not the same. The center cannot hold, kind of, is, I think. So, okay, so if everything outside, so think of the center of something, a circle, and then outside of it would be, I guess, a larger area. So the center of your body maybe is your heart. Maybe think of it that way. Okay, that's where we're gonna enter it from. And then outside of that, everything is different because the circumference of how far it is from the perimeter is a much different length, okay? Just in terms of math, are you following me? So the center of something is like way farther away than all the other points. And so it has its own logic, is what Derrida says. So the center of something, so he's kind of saying you can kind of like, I read it as you can kind of like pull apart anyone's freaking logic if the center doesn't hold. And also the center has to have a logic separate from what's outside of it. So what does that mean? In terms of philosophy, it means that like we make these structures for greater society or the world that I like to think of it as that the greater heart of it is not organized enough to manage that outsider external world. The center cannot hold, and the center is different. And also just the idea of anomalies, that there's something that cannot conform that holds the conformity together. Okay, does that make sense? So there's something that, this is like really high IQ level stuff, and I know I probably sound like a babbling idiot to people who have not read Derrida. So he's saying that the core of something has its own logic that defies what happens outside of the core. So in your heart, what is really happening here is what I'm actually trying to freaking say here, okay? There's stuff that your body, the outside circumference, is going through. There's stuff that your mind is going through. What's going on here? It has its own logic. It's kind of like how actually literally in the body, the enteric system, which is the gut, has its own, is a second brain. So a lot of us with anxiety will have gut issues. For example, I had my appendix removed when I was 5 because of gut issues. They didn't know why I was having horrible gut issues, so they removed it preemptively. And it turns out I just had really bad food allergies, which is a chicken egg scenario, because it's like the anxiety or the food allergies, which came first. I don't know. You may be in a situation like that right now, where it's like, what's the actual origin of this situation? Which also relates to Derrida's. Derrida's, the center is not the same as the outside of it. He has a drawing in this writing where it literally is like a space, and then the center is like drawn out, and it's like he writes why it has its own meaning. And you can also think of it as a black hole, to just make it adjacent to Stephen Hawking. So a black hole is like, Stephen Hawking is obsessed with them. And I'm not going to talk about any of the like theories of relativity that I talked about in previous episodes, which you can look up if you want. I talked about physics in several episodes. But because I talk about a counter theory to Einstein's theory of relativity, which is the quantum loop theory. But so this is actually different here. That a black hole, let's just go with the relativity that is a singular event, the singularity, which means it's like a random thing that happens, it's an outlier, as Malcolm Gladwell would say. The other theory is that there's a bunch of these events, like there's a million big bangs, and we're just like one of several, that the universe is like bouncing off of itself into other ones. Okay, so I guess I did explain quantum loop theory just now. Okay, so in Einstein's theory of relativity, though, like, sorry, this is getting convoluted. I just want to say that, like, the center will not hold relates to black holes, because Einstein says that the black hole is empty, and that it like is like a gravity point that leads to like sort of nothingness, and it's like whereas the other theory says it would spit out matter back at us and create again. Einstein says that it leads to empty, like it leads to an end point. Whereas the other theory uses the Planck model, which means that there's a compression point where matter has to like be spat out. Anyway, so a black hole with Stephen Hawking's, he likes to use singularity as the lens, which is Einstein's theory, and keep it more simple. He likes to talk about time and how the time in a black hole exists in a completely different wavelength, in a different understanding. And he has all these diagrams showing how light travels and how light years travel, and how we don't understand like the time principles in a black hole. And yeah, basically what it is it's a star that's emptied out, and he talks a lot about perception of time, and how what we understand of it, and where we're seeing it like thousands of years later, and also just like perception of light and how we see things. He really is a genius, honestly, but he's also very simple. Anyway, I know this reading got intense, but I think I'm trying to tell you that all the Stephen Hawking stuff, like, and the black hole is something that I'm feeling, I guess, a black hole within you. and it is anomalous, and it is sucking something from you and taking something from you, and it's heavy. And I want you to visualize letting that hole just be filled up by whatever you want. Something akin to love would be nice. And I think that also there's a lot of strain that you're putting on yourself to make old trauma make sense. And I just think that's a waste of time. I think it's similar. It's like trying to make sense of something that's so core to our development. It has its own logic without us that we can't understand. I was thinking about Bob Marley today, and I just don't think any thought form that comes through is not I think it's all on purpose for my readings and just for my life. I really love Bob Marley. I grew up loving his music. I know probably every song. And, you know, he heard that he had cancer on his toe, and he didn't do anything about it. And then he died, but I believe it was also part of his Rasta religion to not, like, interfere. I think you may be in a situation like this, I hope not with cancer, and I hope not with health. I'm thinking more in a metaphorical way, where you've been told by the universe, like, this situation is not working, and you need to have your toe amputated or the growth removed immediately, or go through chemo, and you're like resisting the process and looking towards death instead. But I don't think that death will have you. I simply don't. And I mean it literally and metaphorically. I love the comedian Louis C.K., even though people hate him now because of his, like, sexual stuff, but I like what he says about how, like, your life it's not your life, it's life. So people who kill themselves are being so unfair, because it's like you're part of something greater. You don't get to just make that call. You're connected to this web of humans, whether you like it or not. And that's the reading. There's actually a part 2 to this reading, which is my guides are saying there's like a lot of things that are black holes. Like, so I was talking about singularity, which means that's what Stephen Hawking and Einstein focused on, which is the theory of relativity, that these black holes will end, they'll evaporate, rather than the other theory, which is more recent, quantum loop theory, which is that there will be more black holes and there's multiple events like this. Anyway, so I think actually you have multiple black holes that are one black hole, really, and you don't understand the logic of it because it has its own logic. Just to simplify the Derrida thing, that sometimes the middle of the eye of the storm, okay, has a calm, like inside of a tornado. It's supposed to be very calm, actually, which is really weird. Just like that. That's what I'm talking about, okay? That's like a much more real life example of what Derrida is saying. That the center of something has its own logic. And so that differs from what it holds together, which is like weird and ironic. And you can apply that to like bureaucratic systems or the government or just the body or so many things. It's a genius idea, and it's so obvious too. And what I'm trying to point it towards trauma, okay? We can't see, and I know the reading got a little out there because I was out of body for most of it. We can't see, but I had some crown chakra stuff come through, which activated my brain a little more than my, I think most of that was from my heart chakra and my solar plexus and root chakra, that reading, and I was not thinking Anyway, so I'm thinking now, and I just want to say as we end that my guides are just showing me that you do have a pure heart, and it has trauma that you don't understand, and to honor and allow that trauma and let it be there. Maybe spend, I like to just let my feelings flow, and sometimes it's hard if you are a feeling person to be in the world, but you do also want to find tools to control it. You don't want to be crying all over the place with no control. And also, crying all the time, that's not really feeling our feelings. That's anxiety and depression. That's different. That's like a dopamine problem. Feeling our feelings is having a baseline of generalized anxiety, of general okayness. Okay, a general baseline of being okay, and then maybe you cry for like 10 minutes every other day because something shitty happens. You're just like, oh God, I'm so overwhelmed, I have to cry. But it's not this long black hole that takes over your life. It's just you let yourself cry. Or maybe you're like, oh my God, I'm like angry, and you just like take your pillow and you just like throw it on your bed, and you're just like, what am I gonna do? You discharge that energy. Feel your feelings. Don't let them be hidden. But also, don't, my guides are telling me that don't let people who are toxic, who you can tell would we use them against you, don't hide from them, but don't let them see these deep parts of yourself. I'm not saying put on a show for people. Be authentic, but these are treasured, special feelings and emotions that you're going through right now because you're healing some deep trauma. And I'm saying to, maybe you cry in front of somebody, but also make that time and that personal space and that private, quiet time to feel alone and not judge and not be seen by anyone, so that you can really process what's going on in here where there's its own logic happening.